All right, let's get into Unity, open it up, start a basic project, and just get started. We're not going to go into any of the complexities of lighting and shaders yet, but we are just going to import our assets and put them in there, see how it works, put in some textures, and get used to just how Unity works. So this is the version of Unity that we'll be using. So 2020.1.6 F1. This is the one that exists in the Uni. So search for that one and download that one. Before you do that, it may be useful to download the Unity Hub, which makes installing and opening Unity much easier. So I recommend install Unity Hub and then go online and search for this version and download it. When you start the installer for this, it's automatically going to link it to the Unity Hub, so don't worry about that. So actually, we'll start by opening up Unity Hub. And it might ask you to log in, but for now I'm just going to go to Projects, and I'm going to click New, and I'm going to select my version. And now it's going to ask you this. It's going to ask you for the project name and where to save it, of course, but then it's going to give you these options. It's going to ask you what kind of project you want to make. Select Universal Render Pipeline. This is the one we're going to use because it has slightly higher settings than the 3D and the HDRP. Well, it has higher settings than the default 3D pipeline, and the high definition render pipeline is more high resolution than we needed. Lower down, there are example projects which you can check out in your free time if you want to. We're going to click Universal Render Pipeline. I'm just going to call this Unity example. And I'm going to save it. Do I have a hard drive in here? Not yet. I'm just going to put it in my documents. So this is me, my documents. I'll just leave it in here. Select the folder. Actually, let's create a folder. Let's not be silly. Unity example. There we go. Select folder, just in case it messes stuff up. All right, create. That's all you got to do. Start Unity. That's all you got to do. Select URP, choose where, and click Start. Feel free to skip forward to when this is finished loading. Okay, so our Unity project is up. Almost. Okay, so our Unity project is up. And you kind of move this window up and maximize it. And this is what you're going to see. So you're going to see essentially this scene. And to move around the scene, hold right click in the scene to pan around. And just use WASD and Q and E to fly around the scene. If you've ever played a game like Garry's Mod, it's pretty much that. And you can come in here and look at this, and there's a lot of stuff going on here, and we don't really need to worry about that too much. Let's just get used to what Unity is like and what the scene is and what everything in here is. So there's a bunch of windows at the top which we don't need to worry about too much apart from file and the fact that we have save here. And you have a save scene or just general save, and you also have a save project. And it's good to kind of do both before you close. Here you have a hierarchy, and this is everything that is inside the level. It's kind of like your Maya outliner, right? So anything you select, it's all in here, right? On the other side, you have an inspector. So anything that you select either in the scene or down here will come up with all its information on the side. It may look a little crazy, but don't worry about that. You only need to look at it when you're looking for something specific. Down here at the bottom, you have your assets. So this isn't what's in the scene, but actually what's in the project itself that you can drag into the scene. And by default, you have this assets folder. And then inside here, you have your scenes. And right now we're in this scene. And scene literally just means level. And a different level has different stuff inside it, essentially. So if I create a new scene by right-clicking, create scene, and I just double click that, it's going to send me in a new empty space, right? Separate settings, separate outliner, and all of that. I'm going to go back to the sample scene because this is the one we're going to be using for our presentation. Apart from that, you have other things here like scripts, which is programming, presets, which are some kind of settings, and materials and example assets. So example assets is where all of these assets live. You can see the textures, you can see the shaders, and you can see the models themselves as well. Now, here in our outliner, we want to select this example assets and we want to untick it, right? So it's not going to be visible, it's turned off essentially. And now we want to either drag, well, before we do anything else, let's set up our folders, shall we? Let's go into assets and we can delete example assets, I believe. Let me just make sure there's nothing in here that we want to keep. Prefabs, nope. Shaders, nope. Textures, nope. All right, so we can go back to our assets folder and we can grab this example assets folder and we can just delete that because we don't need it. And this example assets here, we can delete these two that are now red. Let me just open up Workshop Set to make sure there's nothing in there we need, right? Now, let's create a folder for our assets. Let's right click here in our assets window, go to create, and right at the top we have folder. And we're gonna call this our assets. I'm gonna right click, create another folder, and we're gonna call this models. Or rather, yeah, let's just call it models. Then let's call one more textures. One called shaders. And we'll leave, I think the rest is fine for now. So what we want to do is we want to open this models folder and just drag in our models in there. Just our FBXs. And then we want to go back to our textures and drag our textures in there. Like that. Now if you have a floor, you can just drag the floor in. I don't have one at the moment, so I'm going to right click on here and create a 3D object and a plane. And if you haven't made a floor yet, this will be something you can do. Now, apart from just right clicking and moving around, you can also use Maya controls, which is what I'm doing right here now. And you see that when you import something, it's not really in the center of the world like in Maya. So I want to go up here at the top right and type in 0, 0, 0 for its position, and now it's in the center of the world. So let's just drag in one of our assets. Let's drag in the table. It's an alright scale, I believe. It's an okay scale. And we can drag in our lamp. I'm going to try and drag it in on the table. Nope, couldn't do it. Okay, drag in our lamp and put it on the table. And then drag in our little plug socket and just put it at the back there. Right. So this is why I was telling a few of you that you only need to model one thing and then you can duplicate it in the engine, because now I can duplicate this lamp as many times as I want. If you have plates, if you have chairs, if you have walls, you can just duplicate them. Now we've added our assets in here, and now we're going to in here inside models, or actually let's go back to textures. And in here, we're going to right click and we're going to create a material. Let me just find where material is. Where are you? There you are, right? So this is a material, default settings. And you can just drag this onto any asset, right? And you can change its base color and all this stuff. And a lot of other properties as well. But we already have some properties that we want to add to this material. And you can drag it onto any asset you want. But for now, I'm just going to leave it here. And whilst I have this selected, I have these textures next to it, right? So I can drag these textures. I'm not going to click them and drag them. I'm just going to click this and then drag this texture for the color into base map. And you can see down here, you get a little preview. I'm then going to drag the metallic texture into metallic, and I'm going to drag the normal into normals. And we want to select our normal map as well, and go to texture type, normal map, and apply. If you don't do that, you can also do it from the material itself, because it will remind you by clicking fix now. And now we can just drag this onto our asset. And I can just show you once more how that looks if you do it real time. Base map, metallic map, normal map. And there you have it. And you have a little texture there. And because, and here's the cool part, this is why we put all of our assets on the same sheet. Because we don't need to make a separate material for the table and the thing, because they're all using these same textures, and this material is using all of these textures. So we can just drag this material on the other assets, and they're going to pick up their textures straight away. So that's the usefulness of, whilst holding right click, you can scroll back and forth to slow down how quickly you move. So that's the usefulness of putting everything on one map. What's the downside of putting everything on one map? Zoom in on it a bunch. Look at that grain. Look at those pixels. It's not nice. It's not very high resolution, honestly. So if we were worried about this and we wanted some really close shots, it would actually have been better to keep the table on a separate texture so that it can take up more space. However, the table has quite a wide, it's a big asset with a lot of flat shapes, right? So it's a bit difficult to make it higher resolution. There are certain techniques that can be used, but we're going to learn about them in a later time. Certain things like overlapping assets or using tiling textures that allow you to get much higher resolution in your textures. But we'll go through that another time. For now, it's alright to keep assets together. Just be aware that if you put too many together and make your UVs too small, you're going to get even more pixely jaggedness. But again, you're probably going to see your scene from up here, and you're not really going to see a difference. I'm just going to rename this material table lamp socket, but I'm going to put an M at the front, so M table lamp socket, right? And that's it. Now, one more thing. What do you do if you want to not have to apply this material every time? Like I'm gonna take this asset out a bunch of times. How do I just not have to repeat it? Like go back and apply the material to everything. Imagine if you have 100 trees, you're gonna die by the time you finish applying the material. So you can click your asset from in here, and you can go up to materials, and here it shows you what its default material is gonna be. So right now it's nothing. So I'm not clicking the asset in here, I'm clicking it in here in my actual project folder. Go to materials, and then here in the drop downs, I'm gonna click on textures, and I'm not gonna click it, I'm gonna drag this material into this material slot, click apply. Now every asset, unless I change it, every asset is going to use that material. So every time I drag it in, it's gonna use that material. I can still give it a different material on top of that if I wish, but by default, it's gonna take that one, right? And you can do the same thing for your table, and you can do the same thing for every material that you want to have a texture by default, right? Cool. So that's pretty much it. These are the basics. There's a lot of other stuff we can do. There's a lot of cool stuff we can do, but for now, I will be happy if you just drag in your assets. You've prepared them to export properly and everything in Maya, so you can drag them in efficiently and apply your textures, create these materials, etc. So use this tutorial as a step-by-step. And in future, if we have time, we'll go through and do some funkier things. We'll play with lighting, and we'll do a bunch of other cool stuff as well. All right, so thanks a lot, and I hope that helped. Bye-bye.